So, by participating in the support group calls, you are acknowledging you understand there are no mental health providers or attorneys on this call, and that nothing said here is any way to be interpreted as mental health counseling or legal advice.
First, I just want to welcome everybody to our June meeting. We are now halfway through the year. Who would have thought already? And we're grateful to have our two presenters. I recently saw them presenting for another meeting I was on, and they had really excellent presentations. So we have a mother and a father, so you're going to see two perspectives, the male and female perspectives. And they also have a lot to contribute. There's lots of, I'm going to say, breaking things that they were able to accomplish in their own cases, so they will be able to speak firsthand. So that being said, let's move over to our presenters. We're not going to cover anything from the handbook, but if you have a handbook, we do have a section in the handbook on false allegations. But what Rael and Ulysses bring to the conversation is a completely different perspective. First presenter is Rael Lapenta. She's a mother, a formal special education teacher, and a leading family court reform advocate based in Pennsylvania. After enduring a devastating experience with false allegations during a high-conflict custody battle, she co-founded the Interference with Child Custody Coalition, a national advocacy network with chapters in all 50 states, focused on educating the public and pushing for the enforcement of custodial interference laws. Rael now speaks out to raise awareness about often overlooked forms of abuse, including parental alienation. And then our second presenter, Ulysses Slaughter, is a father of 6, a filmmaker, and a veteran of the United States Navy, internationally recognized for his creative and groundbreaking reconciliation work. Mr. Slaughter is author of the historic Philadelphia MOVE bombing apology, which was passed by the City Council of Philadelphia in November 2020. Target of a false allegation of abuse by his ex-wife in August of 2021. Mr. Slaughter creates and facilitates workshops designed to help people understand, prevent, and recover from false allegations of abuse. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you guys all for coming. And Cindy, thank you so much for having us and for all that you're doing for parents that are victimized by either alienation or false allegations. So today we're going to be talking about the nightmare of false allegations, which is a tactical, not truthful event presented by myself and Ulysses Slaughter. So our plan today is to go over our introductions, the map that we've created to help parents that have been falsely accused, including pieces of documentation after that, the paths that a false allegation can take and the impacts, how to crawl out from one, a brief introduction to some case studies that we're going to be doing for our next workshop, some advocacy information, and then upcoming events.
Thank you again, Cindy. Thank you. And thank you to your organization for having us this evening. We look forward to sharing our experience. We look forward to learning something here tonight as well. And as I think we'll say at some point, we are part of a group, a club that nobody asked to join, but we've decided that we are going forward lifelong members as people who are going to fight false allegations globally for as long as we can. And I came here out of the blue, so to speak. August the 4th, 2021, my ex-wife decided that she wanted to initiate a divorce. And in order to initiate that divorce, instead of initiating the divorce based on truth, she decided she would make up a false allegation of abuse in order to have me evicted from the house. So the video, the screenshot that you see to the left that says my wife filed a false abuse claim, that was me literally recording myself for about 20 minutes the day I was evicted, August the 4th, 2021. I evicted from the time I recorded with my phone from the time that I saw the state troopers pulling into my driveway until the time that I got in my truck and drove away from my home. This was a very important part of my journey in that it was recording this and ultimately posting it that got me all kinds of new resources, all kinds of new relationships. And I think this thing has been seen more than 10 million times, probably more, and on different platforms. So I'm grateful that I was called, so to speak, to record this very devastating moment. And I'm glad that it was transformed into something that I'll talk about a little later.
My name is Rael Lapenta. I'm a former special education teacher. I had started my own practice in Marlton, New Jersey, where I grew up, and I moved here to Delaware County, where I began a intense, devastating custody battle in 2020. I moved out, and then the war began, which I would have never expected. So I have learned, as the same as Ulysses said, the amount that I've learned on the way, I am grateful for, because as we'll talk about in our presentation, you are so blindsided that it's really hard to get yourself together to figure things out, but you have to. So I was falsely accused. I'm continuing to be falsely accused. I had 23 CPS investigations within 8 months, right before our trial was supposed to end in 2023. I'm currently still dealing with them, and everything sort of has been on hold, or I have had some kind of negative consequence. It has affected custody, it has affected my career for years. We actually just had the criminal taint hearing. That's an example of something I definitely learned is an option to do in a criminal motion. You can file a taint hearing where you are asking the judge to determine if the witnesses are coached or competent. And in my case, the witnesses were my children, and they have been found not competent and coached repeatedly for the same exact event, but luckily in the criminal, they just had that finding again. So I started becoming an advocate. I started reaching out and talking to people and trying to find a way to change this. Because sadly, what I've also learned is that this is not a thing that happened to me. This wasn't a bad choice I made. This wasn't just like a unlucky situation. This is a thing. This is something that people do, and they use it as a strategy and a technique and a tactical move to make changes in things like custody and divorce because it works, and it shouldn't work. So I met Ulysses through going on a podcast. Someone had introduced us, and we're in the same county. So we work together often in our county specifically, as well as our state, and as well as across the country now. We are actually in an international group too. I presented to the UN in New York a few months ago. So we absolutely will continue. I'm in the club too. I didn't want to be here, but I can't leave until it's fixed.
Have you or someone you know ever been wrongly accused? It's almost impossible to understand unless you have been falsely accused. In family court, a devastating tactic where one parent makes false abuse claims to gain an advantage in custody or divorce proceedings is called the silver bullet strategy. A silver bullet is a highly accurate projectile of death or destruction, just using false allegations of abuse that instantaneously gives accusers the upper hand. Once this tactic is executed, the accused is presumed guilty until proven innocent, and the destruction can immediately remove you from your home, your job, and your children. This process is not only emotionally draining, but financially crippling. It can take years and cost thousands to prove your innocence. Often the stigma and attached consequences cannot ever be remedied. Take Dave Weigel, a successful Wall Street manager. His life was turned upside down by false protective orders. Or Ronald Pierce, driven to financial ruin and homelessness. This strategy is misused by some attorneys and even CPS as an easy way to bypass due process. John Adams is quoted, "It is more important that innocence be protected than it is that guilt be punished." So, next time you hear about a silver bullet, remember the real cost of these precautionary measures in someone's life.
There's a way that we look at this stuff in a very technical, almost academic way when Rael and I are doing these presentations. And recently we had a conversation that really kind of got to the gut pain of it all, that a lot of the times people don't get a chance to express. And one of the things that we know is that there's a time and a place for expressing that gut pain. And we'll talk some about that. Sometimes you have to suppress the gut pain in order to deal with the technical legal stuff so that you come across as coherent. Because one of the things that this process is designed to do is to take you out of your mind. It is designed to make you flustered. It is designed to make you question yourself. I talk about it's designed to destabilize you, to disorient you. It's designed to depress you. And it is designed to discredit you. And I think about this a lot and how I didn't understand this stuff when it first happened. But the silver bullet, I find that interesting as well. When I was a child, me and my brother and my cousin used to watch horror flicks. And we would watch Frankenstein and we would watch The Mummy, and then there was the werewolf. And for those of you that remember the werewolf, you know that the only thing that could kill the werewolf was the silver bullet. That it took the silver bullet. If you were going to get the werewolf, you needed to use a silver bullet. And this process makes monsters out of us. It's supposed to make monsters out of us. We're supposed to look like terrible people. And so using this silver bullet, some people call it the nuclear option, is so effective and so damaging and so long lasting if you don't know how to respond, if you don't have the resources. And again, I'm talking technically right now, but I remember the day that it happened to me, and I remember just how out of my mind I was. Fortunately, I had good relationships, I had good resources, and I had a good reputation that I was able to stand on. But with all that, on that day when the bomb dropped, when the bullet was shot, I was totally flustered. And we hope that our work will help people very early in their stage of this process so that they don't make some of the same mistakes that we made.
That's exactly what we're doing here. And if you haven't seen it, there's a YouGov survey that was done 3 years ago, and they found that one in so many were, and now it's increased by, I think, 3% in the past few years. And so now 1 in 10 people have been falsely accused. So if you don't know someone that it happened to, if it hasn't happened to you, likely that's going to be something that just keeps increasing. So we created this video of facts. Basically, we refer to it as the map of false allegations, because when you talk about different paths that it can go down, it is very tricky, and you have to be aware.
And we've had to develop a lot of tools to explain this experience. We know that there's a lot out there, but there's still a lot missing in this conversation about false allegations. And one thing that we know is that a false allegation has to take place somewhere at a particular time. It has to take place in a particular jurisdiction. It happens at a particular time, a particular jurisdiction, and it happens under certain circumstances. And so this map that we're going to talk about gives you a sense of how things happen after the false allegation hits ground zero and where we go from there.
You've just been falsely accused. It's shocking, it's disorienting, it's demoralizing. False allegations are designed as a tactical, not truthful offense. They put you on the defense and have serious consequences, even if eventually found not guilty. But most importantly, it's a crossroads. From this point, your life can go down 3 very different paths: criminal charges, civil litigation, or a Child Protective Services investigation. These paths can cross over or happen simultaneously. The criminal path is the most severe. If the state decides to press charges, whether it's assault, abuse, or harassment, you're facing a trial, which can take months or years. The standard here, beyond a reasonable doubt. That means the government must prove you're guilty to a near certainty. And if they do, you could lose your freedom, your record, even your rights as a parent. Next, the civil path. This is where you might be fighting back, suing your accuser for defamation, emotional distress, or malicious prosecution, or defending yourself against things like restraining orders. The standard here is lower, preponderance of the evidence, just over 50%. It's about money, damages, and restoring your reputation. Then there's the path through Child Protective Services. They can't charge you with a crime, but they can change your family forever. CPS investigations happen in family court, not criminal court. CPS can work with police to add criminal charges. The standard is usually clear and convincing evidence. Many states remove your children before and while investigating, even based on a false allegation, and open investigations affect other court systems like custody and divorce. 3 paths, 3 systems, 3 outcomes, and 1 allegation is all it takes to start it all. But when you know your rights, document everything, and stand up to fight, you take back control. False allegations can ruin lives, but truth and action can protect yours.
If you've been falsely accused, I guess you would be aware that they can go down different paths. And both Ulysses and I have totally different experiences where the false allegations in my case had started in family court. And when they were not effective, I guess, but it kept escalating and escalating and escalating until it wound up in CPS. Like I had said, 23 investigations, CPS had unfounded, and then eventually with the continued reporting, they did get criminal charges involved, which then affected my custody matter. A lot of them were the dependent on it. So at one point in my case, I was involved in all 3 paths simultaneously. And then there was also PFAs involved, which then are paths that crossed over from civil to criminal. And I know Ulysses had a different situation where he was on different paths.
Mine began civilly. I was being sued. A divorce is a lawsuit. The allegation, which used a tool called a protection from abuse petition, violating that would have put me on the criminal side of a conversation. So I could have, if I made a misstep, and there were many, many times where I was being essentially taunted to make a mistake, to fall over from the civil part to the criminal part. I mean, it was really nasty. And again, when this happens to you and you don't see it coming, and then when you are thrown off by the fact that somebody that you trusted to a great degree has betrayed you in this way, that's when it's even more disorienting. It's easy to become disoriented and fall from the civil side to the criminal side, even by mistake. And nobody cares if you made a mistake and violated the petition. And so I was arrested, handcuffed for the very first time in my life in conjunction with this protection from abuse. And as it turns out, after I was arrested, the judge found that I had done nothing wrong. But I want you to understand something if you have not been in a situation like this. It was enough to arrest me and put me in jail for one night, again, to destabilize me, to disorient me, to put me in a mental state where I could make mistakes, where I could be so messed up in the head that I was vulnerable to myself. And that's what this is designed to do. The false allegation is designed to make you vulnerable to yourself, to make you make more mistakes. And the more mistakes you make, the further behind you get. And the further behind you get, the more likely you're going to give up on yourself. And that is a big part of what they want. They want you to give up on yourself.
Absolutely. And when you are blindsided by one, it's hard to wrap your brain around it. Like you had said, the betrayal, if your children are taken, If you have an issue with your job, obviously it isolates you, and you're so emotional and overwhelmed, which is understandable. It isn't just, it isn't fair. You're shocked and hurt, but it is so, so important for you to, as quickly as possible, acknowledge it, find somewhere to deal with it. We've talked to Robert Garza, and he used the term find a vomit group and vomit all that emotion out, like this support group. Come and talk and vent and complain and bitch, and then, handle what you need to handle with your case. Because with something like a false allegation, the time is of the essence. It is important to collect, preserve, and organize possible evidence as soon as possible. For example, Life 360, and I think Find My iPhone has a GPS location that they record for maybe only a week. So it's a limited time thing. So while you're upset that the false allegation happened, you could be possibly losing some of the evidence that you could have, like security footage. That's another thing that's not automatically recorded. On the Ring camera, there's a default, I think, for 90 days, but it's not set up in every area to do that. And if you don't save it, it won't save.
Ray, I want to add one thing about the documentation part. As I said earlier, I recorded everything from the time I was evicted, from the time the state troopers came for me until the time that I left the property. I recorded the whole thing. But the other thing that I did right away, because I was so shocked at what was going on, I had to go back and reread text messages and emails. And I mean, I really just started gathering that stuff. I'm a journalist. My background is in filmmaking and journalism. So it's kind of natural for me to always be looking for the evidence and to do research and that kind of thing. And so I went back 2 weeks before this eviction, and I collected the whole thread of text messages between us. I didn't know it, but it is now that I am involved with a lawsuit that I am going to win. Now that I'm involved with a lawsuit, all of that stuff is going to make a difference in how this lawsuit plays out. But I collected it all. As it turns out, my ex-wife deleted an account, an email account that had all kinds of information that is damning to her. But of course, I have it. I've got everything. And nobody wants to live a paranoid life like that, especially when you don't see this stuff coming. But it is very important for us to know where we are, when we were there, who we were with at all times. And if it comes to pass that you find yourself facing one of these horrible false allegations, you'll already have your library already set up, and nobody will be able to dispute anything about where you were, what you did, who you were with, or why.
And even if you don't have it ahead of time, if you can do it quick enough, you can still get that information easily within a week, even some of the apps within 30 days. So it's important to learn. Plus, you don't want to complain and bitch and cry to your attorney because that's very expensive. They pay every minute. So learning where to put that role and put it somewhere, get a therapist, go to a group, go to a support group, go to meditation, exercise. I know you were talking about that at one of our last meetings, Ulysses. That's a way to go, whatever you need to do, figure it out real fast so that you can get yourself together enough so that you can start looking into the evidence and documenting it in an organized way. So we have this workshop series that we're doing. We do a different topic every month, and one of the months we had a family attorney who came on and was telling us the way that she needs to get the evidence. So you can't just give her every single paperwork that you have, every file. They're not going to look through it. You don't have the money to pay them to look through it. You really need it in a very succinct way that is clear to understand to everybody else, and evidence that matters. Every detail of every email, again, becomes too expensive. You won't be able to hang in to get through this. but knowing what evidence is needed in what court and what is important evidence, and then how to document it appropriately so that it can be used is really important. Finding a pattern of things like prior threats or prior accusations to yourself, or whoever made the accusation against you, if they made prior false allegations, those are things that could be found into a pattern, and that possibly could be evidence as well.
Rael, I want to add that as part of talking to the right people about the right things, whether it be an attorney or a therapist or your friends. A lot of the times we talk to people all the time who say that their friends don't understand what they're going through. Your friends in these cases have very limited capacity to understand what you're talking about, because we're all familiar with the phrase or term cognitive dissonance. When you're looking at somebody that you think you know, and their face is the same face, but their behavior is not the same behavior, it will throw you off. And I find that that is the toughest area of breakthrough for many people when it comes to a false allegation with an intimate partner or an intimate or somebody that you know well, is that you have to come to terms with, this person fooled you, or this person literally betrayed you. As soon as people come to terms with that, they are usually better off, because they spend a lot of time saying, and I think you were saying this the other day, Ray, I don't know what's going on. You say it over and over again. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, because it is so disorienting that this person that you've been looking at all this time has been telling you one story, has been presenting herself one way, and then all of a sudden they're presenting themselves another way. You can't spend a lot of time trying to convince yourself that this person actually called the police on you. It's real. You've got a piece of paper in your hand. It is real. It is happening. So the sooner you come to the realization that it is real, the sooner you will take strong, sustainable action.
Absolutely. It's very real. It is very real. It is very devastating. And it's also very unnecessary in many cases. It's not, at least in my case and your case and the hundreds of cases that we've talked to and that we know, it is not like a maybe they did, or maybe they were so abusive, they just were so close. It is not even close. And the phrase that you say all the time that I have up here is, it's designed to disorient you, dehumanize you, destabilize you, and depress you. And so some of the things that we talk about also in the workshops are, there's 3 parts of the impact. It's that one part of me and the allegation, right? Then it's, this happened to me, what's happening? Then there's the immediate impact of a relationship. And people can't possibly understand how far the impact goes and this still be a thing. I'm convinced of it. So it's your immediate family. It could be that you were taken out of your house and your children are removed. I mean, that is immediately affected. Obviously, your family past that, grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. I know my niece was truly blindsided as well, think, where's my cousin? What's that? Like, I just can't understand. So that's another relationship that's been damaged by the false allegation that happened to me. And it's important, like we've talked about, to understand the circles of jurisdiction. And the first offense is understanding that, in a criminal case, you can't bring a text message from your ex 3 months ago that he said whatever, or you think that he would say it. It doesn't matter in criminal. It has to be directly related to the crime, and it follows a whole nother set of evidence procedure, as well as with CPS and as well as family court. And you need to know which one is ruling each of those aspects so that you understand who you're talking to. So you're bringing the right evidence to the right people. So a big thing that we talk about is the importance of getting yourself regulated and getting that piece so that you can step out of that circle, because we know too many people that get stuck there in the devastation and the unjust feeling and that it's unfair and they're hurt, and they just stay there in that circle and they don't start to take steps out. And I know, Ulysses, you were the first one that had said this to me, and I had started doing it, and it was definitely empowering to sort of start taking the offense in every avenue you can. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, and I want to depart from again what you're saying about getting out of this first circle, really stepping out of that first circle. As this illustration shows, you got to emerge out of that hole. You got to be able to accept that you were wronged. You got to stop questioning yourself. You got to be very clear and firm in the fact that you were wronged. And instead of waiting to see what's next, because something is coming next, you got to understand that when this thing is done, it's very well laid out. They already know what step 2 and 3 is. I remember when I was falsely accused, I talked to an attorney and she said, well, the next thing they're going to try to do is get exclusive possession of the house. There's a playbook involved here. They already know what step 2 and 3 are, and they know some of the other strategies. So what I started to do as quickly as I could was I started to open up the frame of this conversation so that I could bring other aspects in and that I could go on the offense. So I guess it took a little while longer than I wanted, but I filed a lawsuit in less than a year after this false allegation was filed against me. I filed a lawsuit, and it is going to be successful. And it was filing that lawsuit, going on the offensive, leading the action that re-empowered me, because I felt like I'm doing something now. Oh, you thought that you were just going to be swinging. Oh, no. I'm swinging back now. I'm not just cowering and covering. I'm actually swinging back now. And it's crucial that we swing back. It's crucial that we defend ourselves. In boxing, they say protect yourself at all times. From the point that you are hit, when you're sucker punched, you better start protecting yourself at all times. And finding some way to strike back legally is crucial. And then there are other things I talk with people about. It's not always about legal strikebacks. It's something I can talk about at another time.
Right. So it doesn't have to be a lawsuit. I mean, I filed a lawsuit as well, but that takes money and time. But for example, there just was a fee that wasn't paid by my ex. I mean, I felt so good. I went to small claims court just in every avenue, because being the only one on the defensive constantly is so isolating, and you become this constantly fighting back, which then doesn't help with your regulation. So even a piece of something else that doesn't have to be a big lawsuit, just some filing professional complaints. That's something else that, that might not anything come from it, but it might. And if we don't do it, people won't know that it's a problem. So you could even file a professional complaint for the people that are involved. And learning the laws, trying to get criminal laws enforced is also something you could do that doesn't have to do with getting an attorney and paying for something like a lawsuit.
Ray, I remember learning that I could have filed a private criminal complaint a long time ago. These are the types of things that you and I learned as private citizens along the way. And these are the things that we're telling people. We're hoping that we can help people recover faster based on the things that we've learned. So I filed private criminal complaints. I filed about 3 different types of complaints that had nothing to do with the legal matter, but are just as effective and impactful because they're coming from a different place. And again, as a military guy, I'm always looking for ways to change the theater, to change the way that people have to defend themselves. And once attacked, I have no choice but to figure out how to defend myself and how to go on the offensive.
Absolutely. And these aren't vexatious, made up things that we're saying. They are legitimate that we probably would not have explored if we were not accused first. But what happens is they sort of pull the pin on the grenade, and we're on the other side picking up shrapnel and bleeding, and that's it. And it's just left as we're always on that piece picking it up. So being able to change the format and really think out of the box to say, wait a minute, this is wrong. And so now we're going to start counting up all the errors that everyone's having so that you have to be accountable too. Let you defend yourself while I'm defending myself, right? So it helps the playing field a little bit. And as in this image, I think the important part at the very end to think about after you're out is there's two ways to go. You survived, run like hell, and everybody behind you is going to go down the same path. And what one of our big pieces that we push too is you crawl out, you got out. Now now that yourself is together enough, think about changing the path for others. And it's really advocacy, and talking to legislators and stuff definitely isn't as hard as you would think. And there's a way to do it. And we just need more people doing that and advocating for their story in a way that can be heard.
Where I want to add that when people look at you and I or other advocates who've been through this type of terror, it changes the way that they view what we've been through, because a lot of times people will just kind of cut and run after they've solved their problem. But many people have come to me and said, thank you for not just thinking about yourself. Robert Garza says that all the time. He says they came after me and I turned around and wrote a bill that helped millions of people in Texas. And that kind of advocacy, that kind of push gives you a sense of the character of that person. So when he goes into court in the future, people are looking at him different. He's not just, a private citizen. He's still a private citizen, but he's somebody who cared enough about other people that he was going to help change the ugliness of his situation and for other people as well.
So we have been doing these workshops, this false allegation workshops, in preparing for Internationally Falsely Accused Day. And a little bit later in the presentation, we'll go into a little bit of the founder that Ulysses had the interview of that day. But our first workshop was, in summary, basically a general one, right? We had Robert Garza as the speaker, so sometimes we have a speaker, sometimes we don't. The second one, we talked a lot about documentation and going over the terms and the map. And this last one, we had a therapist from Utah. I mean, I think she's excellent too. And, Ulysses met her and agrees, but she really talked about the need to take care of yourself so that you're not getting sick in that piece. So the next one that we're going to be focusing on is your story is our story. So I can cue up the clip, the interviews that you did, Ulysses, with the 3 cases, if you want to set that stage.
So one of the things that we note, and I saw something with the invitation to this particular meeting where people understandably will come into workshops like this with very specific individual concerns. They want to be heard, and we get that. When we do our workshops, oftentimes at the end, we'll ask for questions and answers, and people will want to talk about their individual story. But if we listen to everybody's individual story, it would take forever. Not only that, we're not offering legal advice. We're strategists, and some of the stuff we'll talk about will be related to legal matters, but we're not lawyers, and we want people to be very clear about that. But everybody's story that we've heard, I think, can be put into some very similar categories. There's some unique aspects to everybody's story because everybody's unique. But there's some similarities to these stories as well. And after listening to these stories, for me now, going on 4 years of listening to people's stories, I feel for the individuals that have gone through this, but I can see the similarities. And I think it's in seeing those similarities that when we think about changing things legislatively, state for state, that's when we know, okay, there are enough people having this problem, this big problem, that if we could get them to rally around these stories, we could show that a change is needed. But we can't do that with individual stories. We can only do that with a collective. And so these are 3 stories that we recently captured, just 3 stories in part. But if you listen to them, you'll hear a common thread between these 3 stories. For people who don't get this reality, how could you even begin to describe?
I never believed this. I never would have believed this was possible. Like I said, I've said to her a couple times, just don't. The one time I said, just don't try and take my kids from me. I don't know why I said it because I didn't think it was possible. I said it to her another time too. I said, look, I think early on trying to work out things. I said, I'll pay for everything. I'll keep paying the mortgage. I'll pay for. I'll even come by and do work. I was hoping we could stay friends. And that was, and I said, all I want is to be able to be with my kids. She knew the only thing that it could hurt me was to take my kids. I don't give a shit about money or anything like that. I don't care. So the fact that somebody could get away with this when I actually have a court order saying my kids are supposed to be with me, and she could just take them for years, and nobody does anything about it. The police, so many police reports, and the police say, sorry, it's civil. Bullshit, it's civil. It's not civil. Take your kids and see if it's civil. They don't want to get involved. And so there's these bullshit laws saying that they're not laws. That's the thing. That's not even a law saying that's a civil matter. So they say you got to go to court. You go to court, they tell you, okay, here's your report. But who's going to enforce it? So if nobody's there to enforce a rule or a law, a court order, whatever it is, and the judge isn't going to throw anybody in jail or do anything like that, what's the point? I don't know how anybody would ever believe this. My friends, I mean, only the ones who've been with me. I mean, I think I have maybe 3 people that have been with me from the beginning of this. I've lost the rest of my friends. Guys who I was like family with are gone. And a couple of them just don't want to be involved with it. A couple of them, their wives, I guess, were not friendly with her because all she does is talk trash on everybody, but they think that they're friendly with her. So they didn't want to get involved because of their wives. A couple of their wives actually helped her. Because they just jump on the man beat a woman type of story, which wasn't true, but that becomes a thing. No, people don't believe it, even the people around me.
I'm not sure how to describe it. It just kind of happened. It was out of control. When it first started happening, I didn't know what it was or how it happened until I connected online, figured out what was happening, and it's an actual real psychology with specific exhibiting factors, and that was much more reassuring to understand what's exactly happening. At first, it was extremely difficult and shocking. I had this empty feeling in my stomach. But once I could identify it and connect with other people, that just really helped me stay grounded and start to try to take actions to help the situation however I could.
Well, it was really hard because, and understand that my ex-wife is a sign language interpreter. and she is white. She's hearing, able-bodied. So the very opposite of me. I am deaf. I am blind. I am Black. And, you know, all of those things that are involved in general. The attorneys, the judge, you know, all of the people involved, the police, they didn't match me at all. They were all different, and they really didn't understand who I am. And they already had a preconceived notion of what I could do, that I couldn't take care of my daughter. And in fact, between my ex-wife and I, we knew that we were a stay-at-home dad, and I was the full-time caregiver for my daughter independently. But in just looking at me, they thought it was impossible, that it had to be mom that took care of her. And that was just heartbreaking, because it added to the society's perception of me already, because I was disabled. And my ex-wife took advantage of that. And it was to the point where in court, my ex-wife put everything on hold and said that the interpreter was misunderstanding. And really, that wasn't her place, but she was controlling the narrative.
And I think our purpose of the next workshop is to not only hear those details from other people, but then to come up with the pattern, because that is what you need to advocate to other people. So, you know, isolation from friends and family, extreme pain and devastation and consequences in multiple areas of your life for years, controlling the narrative. Those are all things, at least those three are certainly things that anyone who is falsely accused can agree on. And that level of impact is important for people to understand, that this is not just a one-time thing to do cautiously, and it benefits everyone to make sure nothing is really happening when they don't hear the painful side. Because it is so painful, people don't want to speak out about it. I do not want to speak out about it and tell people that this happened. And the assumption is, if police press charges or if CPS takes your kids, that you did something. And it is very hard to face that fact when you come forward and say, but it didn't, because a lot of people assume it did.
I think the hardest video there for me, Ray, was LJ, and for a lot of reasons. He expresses himself as so thoroughly compromised. That's the most compromised individual that I think I've met. And until you introduced me to him, I couldn't understand the multifaceted aspects of, or the many, many aspects that a person has to deal with a false allegation. Sure, we talk about gender or sex sometimes, we talk about race. We don't often talk about what he referred to as his disability. And so that he would be betrayed or compromised or abused in that way in a courtroom setting was hard to wrap my brain around. But he's living in a space where he's very isolated, and him getting help is very difficult. But until we start to share these stories and show how wide they are, we can't bring people together to say, we got to fight this. We got to find common ground to fight this on, because a lie is a lie all day long. And we need to expose the false allegations collectively And I want to say one other thing that I forgot to say earlier, that it is a crime to make a false allegation. And a lot of people don't even know that. And so they don't even respond to that. It's something that was the last thing on my mind, was responding to the fact that my ex-wife had made a false allegation. I was so busy defending that I didn't know I could go on the offense with that. But this is why these collective conversations matter, is that we come together with all these resources and we can source more together than we can by ourselves.
When something's happening to you, I'm a special ed teacher. And then when my son was having some sensory processing, it's something I do all day long. I could spot it from a million miles away. It's my thing. And then when it's in my own house, even in that situation, it feels different, right? You don't think clearly about that because there are so many emotions involved. So that's the same thing when it becomes a false allegation. You can pursue having a crime prosecuted and charged. When someone commits a crime against you as a victim, you have the right to report that. And very often people don't think of that. Or they're so devastated and upset and dysregulated at the time that it's easy to say they're not going to do anything anyways and not even try. And so I know with one legislator I was talking to, he said, "Oh no, this actually never ever happens in my district." And I said, "I guarantee it does, but no one has ever brought it to him." We don't think to do that. And there's so many different ways that you can advocate. And I think that that's one of the things that me and Ulysses do well, and we do it often, is we advocate at many, many levels because it's not enough still, right? So I think that's important. And so I don't know if anybody in the group is advocating for anything personally or for any of their cases, but that's something that we want to help people with. So here I have an image that we had created for advocating with false allegations. And it could be things like talking to legislators. So here on the right, I guess it's on the right of your screen too, is all different images of things we're doing. So I guess I'll take a few of them, and then Ulysses, if you want to go over a few of them. We went to the county council because we're in Pennsylvania. It's a commonwealth. So every county is its own kingdom. Some counties have mayors, some counties have county councils, and they do oversee a lot of the processes that are going. So me and Ulysses had come up with our 3 minutes that you're allowed for public comment. We went to the county council, and afterwards, one of the members had reached out and said, after listening to you, we know it's a problem that protection from abuse orders are misused, not only because of the data, which shows that per capita we have the most protection from abuse orders happening in our county, but also because then judges and attorneys had also gone to the councilwoman and said that this is a huge problem here. So it gives validity, but we wouldn't have known any of those things had we not taken the chance to go forward and present there. So we are also asking for like a proclamation in our county for Internationally Falsely Accused Day. A piece of advocacy could even be, in my case, I just had this recently, talking to the pediatrician about what's happening, because there's a narrative that's told, and it's hard to defend it, to be able to gather yourself enough, but to be able to then present your facts. And so to schools, to groups like your church or the baseball team, for them to understand your side in a way that isn't like, and then he said, and then I said, and then she said, nothing like that, with the facts in an organized way that you can then present it. So going to the Capitol is huge, and it's definitely not as scary. Like we said, putting in complaints. I don't know, Ulysses, if you want to talk a little bit about Jolene and our the press release for the innocent but guilty and working with Robert Garza, because you're new to legislation too, right? Did that
At
when
least
you
this
started
type of
meeting?
at least this type of legislation. I've talked to a number of legislators about other things in the past, but false allegations, I think, because I was never falsely accused, wasn't something on my list. One of the things that's important about what we do is that we have a multifaceted approach. We talk to people one-on-one sometimes. We're just having conversations, and somebody will say, hey, that happened to my brother, my sister, my mother, my father. Just going out and being public, if people look at the what I think is the upper right-hand corner with you and I sitting there on a bench next to Jolene, the mannequin that you created, who's she's inside of a prison, a jail cell, and we take Jolene out, and Jolene has a motion activated voice device where when people walk by her, she yells out, please wait, stop. And she tells this whole story. And we were in a park once and people walked by her, and every time somebody walked by her, she would say something. And it was great because it began a conversation without us having to talk. Jolene started the conversation for us. So going out and doing these public presentations is very impactful. It's the kind of thing people aren't used to, but it's the kind of thing that people need to see, because this is such an outrageous predicament we find ourselves in, that the only way to address outrageous in some cases is with outrageous. And so Jolene shows up as outrageous. So we've got Jolene making the rounds with us, and then we've got the Innocent But Guilty campaign that we're working on, which is a photo campaign where we've got people simply holding up a sign. As you can see here, Rael and I are at the bottom. They're holding up our sign. It says innocent but guilty. And it means what it says, that we are innocent, but we are called guilty as people who are falsely accused. And we are saying we are in that group. And if you are in that group, if you understand that group, stand with us, share it on social media, and let's start a conversation. These are the types of things that start conversations. So it is leading up to our Falsely Accused Day, which is September the 9th, 2025, International Falsely Accused Day. And we'll talk about Lynn Crabtree in a moment, who is the founder of International Falsely Accused Day. And Rael, I always bring this point up that it was September 9th, 2020, when Lynn Crabtree started International Falsely Accused Day in the United Kingdom. And on September the 9th, 2021, was the first time I have ever been handcuffed and put into a jail cell. So when I learned the coincidence, I'll call it, I became that much more committed to this. I was put in jail on International Falsely Accused Day, the first anniversary of it. So this does mean quite a bit to me. Doing these things means a lot to me.
But we just reached out, right? We went into a group. I think that's the biggest thing that has changed in me. Not only is my patience like unbelievable now, I was saying to you, recently, I didn't want to wait. And in the beginning, when they said, oh, it's going to be 30 days or 60 days, I was like out of my mind. Now someone could say, well, 3 months. So I've had to learn, unfortunately, an insane amount of patience. But we just reach out all the time, and we go out of our comfort zone, and we talk to people, and we just talk about this in an organized way. And we did wound up getting to interview the founder directly.
I was so devastated, I didn't want to actually live anymore. And I can remember the day after I'd been arrested, I laid in bed holding my partner's hand, and we both said, life's just not worth it anymore. I'm Lynn Crabtree, and I am the founder of International Falsely Accused Day. I'm just an ordinary person who was a teacher, and due to being falsely accused alongside my partner, I'm no longer that. My career was completely trashed because that's what happens when you're falsely accused. Your name becomes nothing but mud. When you're falsely accused, comes out of nowhere. It just hits you. And that's what happened to us. It came out of nowhere. We were dragged out of bed very early in the morning. They just raided the house, completely just took over. There were police everywhere. It was just horrendous.
Lynn was at our last workshop just last Thursday, and I remember making the comment to her that if the falsely accused had a face, that hers would be the last one that I would expect to see, that she would not be the face of the falsely accused. And that speaks to how widespread and crazy this is that anybody's face can be the face of the falsely accused. You look at LJ, nobody would think that a guy who was handicapped could have to go through what he's going through, but it has no limits. It will contaminate every space as long as people just kind of sit back and let it be. If nobody speaks up, it just keeps happening over and over again.
So we are encouraging people to request a proclamation, which you'll see here next to Jolene is the example. We have a template with a letter that you can send to your mayor or to your governor, and the proclamation is just an official acknowledgement. So we're asking them to acknowledge Internationally Falsely Accused Day. And if you're going to make the request, now's a good time to do it, because sometimes it could take 3 months or whatever for them to get back to you. And we have, you see at the bottom of the screen, the 3 images, all of these different possible activities that are really, we believe, empowering, like the Jolene example. I made Jolene out of PVC and styrofoam and wheels from Depot. So these things aren't hard, but they can be impactful. Or plastic chains with a story that could be put up somewhere. There's just so many ways to make an impact and get awareness and get people acknowledged and talking about it. It's unbelievable how many people come up and go, hey, wait, that happened to my dad. People don't realize this is a thing. And if someone accuses you of something that you didn't do, it doesn't have to be the police that get involved. It's to make it a false allegation. So we're doing the Innocent but Guilty social justice photo campaign. We hope you'll participate. All you have to do is just take a selfie with a sign. Send it to us, post it, hashtag to Innocent but Guilty. It's just a way to raise awareness. Our next false allegation workshop in our series, it'll be the 4th one. It'll be July 3rd at 12 noon Eastern. You can email paprotectkids@gmail.com to ask for the registration. I can send Cindy the follow-up, and she could send that out after this. In Pennsylvania, we're also doing a PFA forum. PFA stands for Protection from Abuse Order. And then we're also addressing some GAL concerns. We're working with an auditor who's done a report on GALs in Pennsylvania. So those two are Pennsylvania specific. And all of this is leading up to acknowledge Internationally Falsely Accused Day. Do you have any more to add about events?
Only to say that oftentimes Rael and I, and maybe people in this group know this feeling, have felt like outcast, have felt like weirdos, have felt like, who are we to do this thing? And I think another take on this is that somebody has to pioneer the things that are right. Somebody has to be courageous. Somebody has to be outspoken. I was looking for one of those quotes, and this is as close as I could find to it. It says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And it's right up with the other saying similar, where it says everybody says what you're doing is stupid, and then in the end they go, we should have been doing this all along. And that's where this is going, as far as I'm concerned, is that people are eventually going to say, well, wait a minute, we should have been doing this all along. The fact of the matter is that there are laws against false allegations of abuse, but a lot of the times they're not being enforced. So we are going to keep pushing to have this stuff enforced. It's on the books. We're not asking for something special. We're just asking people to do the right thing. And so with all these activities, we're looking to maintain some continuity so that we can get some traction, so that we get some longevity, so that before you know it, 2 years will have passed and we can say we've been doing this for 2 years. That's the goal here, is that we're going to be the weirdos who keep pushing the right thing until we find more weirdos to join us. And then there'll be enough weirdos to turn the tides here.
You might be a weirdo. I may work with you as a weirdo, but I'm just falsely accused. But no, for sure. People don't, nobody's like, wow, I want to do that too. Or, and it's, no one's like, you're going to change things. It definitely comes with negative approaches and criticism, but we're out here and we're doing it, and we're just talking to everybody, and we're talking to training groups, and we just, for sure, I know we're making a difference, at least to some people individually, but our goal is to keep going to show this pattern. So
they are. And thank you both for an excellent presentation. Lots of great different videos to keep our attention, and really appreciate your willingness to tell your stories and your vulnerability in doing so. I'm going to start with a couple of questions, and I know, Ulysses, you said weirdos. I want to throw out there, I've been around in this community since 2002. I'm a targeted parent. I had false allegation years ago as well. Great progress in seeing what you all are doing. My comment is, instead of weirdo, I would like to assert that part of the process of undergoing these false allegations is a huge amount of shame. And shame is something that has been put upon you for years and years, that gets implanted in your own brain. And when that person who is shaming you isn't even there, we continue to do it to ourselves. And so I don't see it as weirdos. I see it as that's the whole intention, is to make us feel and look like weirdos, but we aren't. We're being blamed and shamed. And if we can begin to get some power around that languaging on shame, we can kind of perhaps not feel that we need to isolate and start getting out and not allowing others to shame us.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I think that there's a way that people want us to be something that we're not. That is what the false allegation is. It's trying to make you something that you're not. And when the law, when we're talking about parents, but this is bigger than just parents, because again, the divorce proceedings, whether you got kids or not, divorce proceedings can be impacted by this.
Right.
When people see that you are second So it's always the person that does this first that gets the advantage. The person that comes behind them is the respondent, right? That's the person who's the defendant. It's the person who was second. It doesn't mean that they were wrong. It doesn't mean they did anything wrong. It just means that they are now running a lap behind. And so they look silly to other people because people just assume that they're guilty. And that person has to just keep running and running the marathon, no matter how silly it looks, until they can catch up. And once they catch up, people start to look at them differently.
Well,
We got to catch up.
And just to your point, the fact that somebody verbalizes something and then files a piece of paper does not mean that it is so. So that's the thing we have to keep in mind is a piece of paper does not incriminate you. So, but the first place that most humans will go to, because we're so shocked by it, is their primitive survival mechanism, fight, or freeze. And none of those are helpful. And so the key is to recognize I'm going back to primitive survival mechanism and I need to actually go into defensive, offensive, not defensive.
Right.
Offensive. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. This is traumatizing.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to use that word because I didn't feel like it fit or saying that this is a form of abuse, but it is. And I had to work that out in going to my own support and empowering myself in some way. But so many things become out of your control and it is humiliating. It is absolutely humiliating. And so it is so, so hard. But once you can learn more about it and realize it's a thing, it didn't just happen to you. This is someone that does that, and it's a form of abuse. And being able to say that out loud that itself is empowering, but it is very hard and it is absolutely shameful.
Ulysses, I heard you talk about that it is a crime and that you can go after it. So, do you go with the district attorney or do you go for defamation with civil court, or is there another mechanism in which you pursue that?
There are a lot of ways you can actually pursue it, which is, again, if you are attacked and you don't understand this landscape, you don't know how many options you've got. One of my options was to file a lawsuit. Mine was actually a breach of contract, unjust enrichment, but I'm going to come back eventually with a defamation of character lawsuit as well. I filed a private criminal complaint because Rael would know this number better than I would, but there's an actual code, maybe two, that could fit this category in the state of Pennsylvania. There's a very good chance that there are similar codes in every state. You cannot make a false allegation to a police officer. You cannot knowingly make a false allegation to, I forgot what the other one is, but there are laws on the books, and you actually have to follow the law. And I remember getting rejected by the district attorney and didn't know that I could even appeal. And then, Cindy, I called the district attorney's office and said, hey, can I appeal this? The district attorney says to me, I have to look that up. And I'm like, what do you mean you have to look it up? See, not enough people are doing these things where it's common knowledge that there's an appeal process. If enough people do this stuff, then it becomes more common knowledge. Rael, what were you going to say?
No, I agree with you exactly. I had filed a private criminal complaint a few years ago, and then the district attorney just said, no, we're not going to pursue it. And that's the end of that. And I was defeated, and I was like, oh, well, I'll try something else. But then I left, and then I realized that's not accurate. I absolutely had the right to appeal it, which would have went before the judge anyways. And no one told me that. He, in fact, told me the opposite of that. And I had mistakenly in the beginning just believed him. So now, and this spoke a little to what you said, Cindy, is just believing on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. You have to challenge and question everything, no matter who tells you, a police officer, a judge, a lawyer. That does not mean that it's true. It could give you some guidance, but you have to look it up yourself. And if it's not in the policy and it's not in the rules, then it doesn't exist. And maybe it's the belief, maybe it's the practice, but it doesn't mean that that's the way it can happen. And you can hold people accountable for not doing what they have to do according to the laws and policies.
We have that graphic where coming up out of the hole is so important. There were two things that I did when I felt myself coming out of that hole. Number one, I fired a divorce attorney and I asked for my money back. And a lot of times people won't even do that. And I got my money back. So that was one of the things that I did. The other thing that I did was when I wanted to file a lawsuit, I went to one attorney who told me vehemently that I had no case, told me I had no case, told me, he was like, you're just going to have to take this one. And then I went to another attorney. He said, no, there are laws. There are laws. I can cite you the laws that say that you have a case right here. And so people have to be willing, the same way we sometimes will get a second opinion from a doctor. You got to be willing to get a second opinion from attorneys. You got to be able to keep asking until you get the answer that you're after without exhausting your resources. But a lot of times people don't know what they're talking about. And if they can send you away with a no answer and they can just kind of brush you off, they'll do it.
I want to clarify too, civil and criminal are different. So when you report a crime, you call the police, they come out just like when your car is stolen, and they take an offense report and they investigate, and it goes to a district attorney or a special investigator, and they charge him against the state. There's no lawyers, you're not really involved in that piece. And then there's civil, which means you are the one taking the action. So that would be like a defamation suit or something that you're saying they filed the false report, they did something to me. Then you do usually need an attorney unless you're pro se, but that's a different route, the civil. And that's in civil court, family court, they're not going to do anything about crimes at all, ever. They're not going to tell you about crimes. They don't know about crimes. It's like asking a surgeon about the bones or something, like a brain surgeon against that, or your heart. It's totally different areas.
And then to clarify further, just so everybody understands, in civil court, that's the one where it's 51% proof. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. Criminal court is beyond a reasonable doubt. So the burden of proof is a little less, but in civil court, you can only recover monetary recovery. They're not going to put him in jail or do anything.
Right. And you have to prove that you were monetarily hurt.
Right.
So like
it's the whole trial,
piece.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you have an option of a jury as well in civil court.
Some policies say they still have to investigate a crime. And that would, again, just be taking an action on the offense to have them at least looked into. So you don't need the evidence to charge a crime. You need the evidence to convict a crime.
Right. Correct. And so I'm working with the district attorney here in California on a case. And it's very clear there's a huge violation. All the evidence is there. So ISNAF has a attorney who's one of our parents. So I reached out to him and said, they're telling me that, this isn't enough for them to take it into a criminal. And he said, they're just lazy. He goes, no, go do their homework for them, provide them all the homework, do this, do that, and don't let them get off with that. And then elevate it higher up. So I met with my congressman. He gave me the person I needed to talk to. And I said, fine, I'm just going to come from the top down with this person because all the evidence is there. So what you just said, we can't just walk away. We have to demand, so I've done basically all of their work. But, what I came to realize is this district attorney refused to let me talk to her supervisor when she declined. And I said, well, then let me speak to a higher up. I have all the evidence. We provided you with everything. I need to talk to someone else. And she refused to do that. She wanted me to walk away graciously and say, okay, thank you. And, close the case, and she goes on. So that's what it takes. To your point on attorneys, the other thing I want to talk about with attorneys is that, especially in family law, we go in, we talk to attorneys, this is what I need, this is what's going on, and we might be green and we don't know what we need to, recognize are the skills that they really need to have. But they'll tell you, oh yeah, I deal with high conflict, I've had this before, yep. And they take all your money and they do nothing and they make your case worse. And then when you're out of money, buy later and you need to go find someone else. So to Ulysses' point, you have to manage your attorneys. You need to make sure you're getting progress on your case. And if you're not, go get another one. And I had 5 of my own exactly for that reason. So great, you got your money back. And then the other thing we're telling parents to do with both attorneys and clinicians who are getting it backwards is file complaints. Go and start filing complaints, and get it on the record for others to see that they're not good people.
And prepare it ahead of time. So if you see it going down that avenue, you can make sure that you're setting emails and you're requesting for them to follow the rules, that you have it in writing, and then you're prepping that kind of evidence for later down the road.
Okay. All right. So moving over to the questions. The first one was about where do you go to find crime created as a crime, and you need to understand your state. And if you're going to go through district attorney, you can't just call the district attorney. You have to go through the police department. So just know
Unless
that.
it's a private criminal complaint. So here you can either call the police and say there was a crime in Pennsylvania, or you can file your own private criminal complaint where you draft a complaint, you bring it down to the magistrate's office, the judge signs off on it, you bring it to the DA makes a determination. So that's a process here in Pennsylvania. I think that other states have similar ones. I don't know.
Yeah. So in California, you have to go through police department. So that's the one I'm talking about. The other ones I haven't dealt with. So, but there's different processes. But I do want to invite everybody. You have great resources. You have Ulysses and Rael. They're very familiar with this. They have an organization. Start talking to them if you have these circumstances, because they've already done a lot of this legwork and they can point you in the right direction.
One of the reasons why we show that map at the very beginning is that, as I said, the false allegation begins in a particular spot. No matter where it is in the country, it happened in a particular spot, a particular jurisdiction under particular laws. You need to know what the jurisdiction and the laws are in the spot where it occurred to you. We don't know all of the spots. Once you know that, that's when you begin to build your argument, when you begin to defend yourself. But you got to know those spots, and you got to know the course that you're on. You got to make sure that you're not asking for information about one course when you're on one path when you're on another path. You got to make sure you're getting the right information for the path that you're on. So the stuff is out there. I just think that a lot of the times not enough people are fighting for it to become. It ain't, as we like to say, it ain't sexy yet. We need to make fighting false allegations a lot more sexy than it is. And once that happens, people are going to be like, oh, we should have been doing this the whole time. This is all I had to do. Yeah, this is all you had to do.
Okay. So I have a parent asking about and I'm just going to ask, are you familiar with anybody going after an adult child or another family member who participated in false allegations or filed them?
I do know personally there was a sibling that was involved in a child leaving one parent that they weren't supposed to. And that parent had said, yes, I want to pursue those. I have to, right? Even if they're a flying monkey. But it depends on the state and the statutes. And I'm not trying to use that as an excuse, but here there is case law now that says that if, for example, Sally makes a false allegation to a doctor or a therapist knowing that they are a mandated reporter, Sally can still be responsible and held responsible, even though the mandated reporter made the claim of abuse. So in Pennsylvania, she could be held accountable for that.
Yeah, ISNAF had a board member, I'm going to say probably 10 years ago, and he spent probably about 10 years trying to create some kind of a law that would be punitive to people who file false allegations. And create them as criminals. And he really spent a lot of time on that. And unfortunately, he hasn't been with us in a while. He got reunited and is happily after with his children now. So
in Pennsylvania, they have that. They have making false reports of abuse and false reports to law enforcement is Penal Code 4906 and 490601. You can look on the Gateway, Children's Gateway, what is it? I just pulled it up, but you can search the state statutes under the Child Welfare Information Gateway. You can go under state statutes and search for child abuse reporting and false reporting.
This person's in California, and he says he doesn't agree that there are legal avenues for false allegations. He's in California. Allegations made in court setting are not subject to defamation or criminal laws. Maybe the judge could perjure someone, but that's rare in family court. So I think the distinction here, and I'm going to let you guys clarify, is that we're not talking about doing it in family court. We're talking about through the district attorney or in civil court, which is a completely different type of court. So go ahead. I will let the two of you address that.
Yeah, it's totally different because they're not going to do anything in family court for something. But I know in Pennsylvania, the perjury law, and again, it's state specific, but the perjury law is a felony. And we do know someone that has had it charged and convicted for a woman that made a false allegation. But they have to make testimony for the perjury law that then results in a court order. And then the perjury. So in my case example, they just found taint, but they said they were not going to have a hearing to prevent the legal consequences, which would have been felony perjury charges. But there's also laws that are misdemeanors for making a false report of abuse. But again, it would not go to anything with lawyers or family courts. They wouldn't do anything. It would have to go to the police.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that what's getting collapsed here is that family court will only deal with family matters. And so it's a completely different court.
Yes.
I self-represented in family court, and then I had my ex went to civil court, a false allegation there. And anyhow, I represented myself there. So I invite people, if you are self-regulated enough, not so overly traumatized, and you don't have any more financial resources to be in family court with one attorney and then civil court with another attorney, and they don't always work both courts, you might consider doing it yourself. But with defamation, it's takes a lot of evidence and it's very difficult to prove. But if you have that, take it on yourself. And hearings aren't in California anyway. Hearings take 2 to 3 months to get a hearing. And then if it gets continued, another 2 or 3 months. So they don't happen, in a week. So you have plenty of time to...
Not a quick fix.
Exactly. It's a very long process. I'm working with the district attorney now, and that's been going on for 3 years. So they're nightmare as well on the slow train.
I guess I was the poster of that last comment that was discussed. I just want to point out that I had spoken with numerous attorneys on this, and they basically all said, look, someone goes to family court and they say, my ex accused me of oh my God, I could talk your ear off on all the crap she accused me of, but she also accused me of attempted murder, okay, in court. She said that I was planning to kill her, okay? I can't do shit with that. I can't do anything. I cannot sue her for defamation. I cannot do anything. I can't file criminal anything because anything said in family court is considered, I don't know what the right word is, but basically above the law. That's what I was told by numerous attorneys. Tell me how I'm wrong.
I would have to look up the law, but I would not just take their word for it. That's what we were saying, is that just because attorneys say it, and just because it might be hard, it might not happen easily, it might not happen quickly. If that's what the law and the statute says, then that's what it says. But I guarantee that you can't just say anything you want there. That does not sound, it might be very hard to do. And it might not be easy, but there's no way that you could just say whatever you want there.
Yeah, my suggestion would be two things. I think it gives you an advantage that for you to use that against the other party in court to say, how could they make such accusations, severe accusations here in court with no evidence? And if it's on the transcript, you have evidence that they said it. So, and I will tell you, in my case, my ex made some allegations against me, and he was going to sue me in criminal court. And the judge actually, our case went on for like 12 years. And the judge actually told him, "What? Are you kidding me? You're going to try to sue this mother and take her away from the children? Well, that's not a healthy family. If you dare do that, I will take custody from you 100%. So instead of going to the district attorney, he went and sued me in civil court, which he lost anyway. But he was just creating more trauma. You know what they do. But things to consider, if you can use that, your attorney should have used that against them for even making such a statement.
So I just ran it through ChatGPT, and what it's saying is that, and you would have to double check this, you can't trust it, but it seeks sanctions under Family Code 3027.1, have a hearing, ask for order to show cause. You will pursue criminal charges for perjury under Penal Code 118 in California, a contempt of court with additional judicial sanctions, civil lawsuit for defamation, reporting an attorney for misconduct, challenge the court procedurally. And so there's 5 different options that they said that you could do with all different codes.
And so that when you say challenge the court procedurally, if the judge did nothing with that and just allowed it, that could be an appeal. Open up an appeal on if you didn't like that decision at that point. So there you go.
To make sure you ask the right way, because if you just say that's outrageous, do something, they're going to say we can't do anything. But an order to show cause, for example, might be the right way to do it.
ChatGPT, I want to just remind everybody, ISNAF had an attorney present a whole presentation. ChatGPT is an amazing new resource. However, be very mindful on
as a guide,
give you codes and anything legal. And just recently, there was a big case. It was in the news where the attorney used case law and he got it from ChatGPT and he filed it, and the judge admonished him and sanctioned him and said, and even that presenter, who's an attorney, said, you have to check your case law, you have to check your codes, you have to go in, whatever you get, don't take it that it's face value, because it's not that clean of a platform.
Right.
So Ulysses, were you going to say something?
Just that everything that I listen to, I always ask myself, what's it worth to me? So every strategy, every seeming dead end, I have to ask the same question: what is it worth to me? And if it means something to me, I'm going to find a way to pursue it. If there is nothing that prohibits false allegations, there's a way around everything. That's just my strategic thinking. And maybe there is nothing that exists down one path, but if I take another path with another question, what's it worth to me to get some resolution in this matter? And each one of us has to ask ourselves that individual question in our individual circumstances. Otherwise, no matter what advice we give to someone, they're going to say, "Nah, I'm not going to do that." Well, nobody can tell me when to stop fighting or how to fight, and plenty of people have tried. So I'm always going to figure out what's it worth to me, and I'll be the final decider in what it's worth to me and when I'm going to stop.
Thank you for saying that. Absolutely, something for everybody to consider. And what's it worth isn't just money. It's your time, your family's time, your children's time, which you will never buy back. And is the reward, going to be valuable? Because court is time consuming and excruciating, as many of you already know. All right, let's move over to Ruth.
Yeah, hi, thanks for this. I just, I think I know some of what this answer is going to be. I don't know how you'd prove this, but I'm in Canada, and there's been a lot of talk lately about lawyers who are advising clients to make these false allegations, right? I had one made against me in child protection court. So what about, I don't know how you'd prove this, but what about like severe career damaging penalties for lawyers who are doing that? Like, what would you do? How could you do that? You need proof. Like, how real is that idea?
Well, Rael, you're really good at looking at dockets, and this is where having somebody or somebodies you can work with is very helpful. All of these allegations have names attached to them. Lawyers' names, clients' names. It's like the PFA thing that we're doing right now is actually kind of going where your question is going. We want to know how prevalent it is in certain counties, certain cities, certain municipalities. And in order to do that, we have to know who has been impacted by a protection from abuse. We know who's impacted by protection of abuse. We'll see the attorney attached to it. We'll see every player attached to it. I know I've heard of some horrible attorneys around the country that clearly are doing this intentionally, and it's just it's a go-to strategy for them. But without consistency in an investigation, whether it be independent, private citizen, no consistency is going to yield anything. So whatever the commitment is to this will determine what you can do in terms of what you refer to as getting sanctions against somebody. Somebody's going to have to be consistently looking at it. And I think once you can prove one person, you scare the whole system.
Well, to what Ulysses is saying, it can't be just, I think they did that. I had a situation with our minors counsel, and my child, who was his client, told me what he had told my child, which was completely illegal. I shared it with my attorney. My attorney wrote to minors counsel and said, you need to retract that. That's illegal. You can't do that. And the minors counsel response to us was, I have attorney-client privilege, and how dare you ask my child what we discuss? Ask my client what we discuss? And this was a minor child. So remember, these attorneys who are telling their clients to do this, they have attorney-client privilege. You have to prove it's illegal. So, but that's a great other resources to go look at dockets and see if there's a pattern.
Absolutely. And I know in my case that, I'm, I guess, lucky in a way that I have found messages that were, my ex working with my child. And I know that my child was brought to an attorney's office. And then that same day, an allegation was made. And then I found out that that attorney has done that same exact thing with the same exact players with multiple people. So I have actually just drafted the complaint against him, and then I can put the other dockets in to say, look, it's not even just my problem. It's not even just, I have this picture and location that my child was taken there, the allegation was made. And then I also have 3 other dockets of the same attorney doing it, and have a very concise complaint. So finding a pattern absolutely helps strengthen your complaint if you can find that.
Yeah, or maybe getting a paralegal or somebody who's familiar with the court system and understands how to go in quickly and create some spreadsheets for you to take a look would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks for your presentations and for your efforts. You guys are great, and I wish you the best with your ongoing cases and activities. So, yeah, I ended up in this situation in 2018. I'm still following it because I got a 10-year-old, so I've got some time left before things could crop up again. And the idea of pushing back, there's so many resources that I've gone through and thousands of hours of stuff, but they all have an endpoint. And I think the endpoint for me has been to focus on the best needs of my kid, and that's a starting point, but it's always comes full circle in the sense that do no harm. The activities that I could have pursued that would have taken time away from trying to advocate in court, in family court. I'm glad that I didn't go that direction, but it definitely was available. If you want to pursue criminal charges or whatever, But it's just not going to be helpful in this community, especially when people know each other. The DA and all the folks don't want to have conflict between them. Nobody wants to take responsibility. The therapist, nobody wants to take responsibility. The custody investigator, they just don't want to lose their license. They want things to go away. So, dealing with it has been like, okay, there have been numerous and gross and just like weird allegations all over the place. And people tend to understand and get exhausted by that pretty quickly, and they can't pursue every one of them, and I can't defend against every one of them. So the idea of working in this direction, really helps to reinforce my need for self-development and positive parenting. And the idea of what I'm looking at moving forward, because I'm not in this position, but I've been a part of Joni's group on PAS intervention, and they have some legislative initiatives that I'd love to have somebody champion here. That I don't know if you guys are connected with them, or if you have any thoughts about the kinds of coordinated legislative efforts to combat false allegations.
I'm in touch with Joni, and I'm aware of her legislation packet. We here in Pennsylvania are pushing Robert Garza's time taken, time back legislation, which we feel is a very compact. He calls it a pretty bill. It's very easy. We have a fact sheet. We have a proposal. It's been well received by our legislators, and we feel like it's a good first step here to help with accountability. Because, like you said, there's avenues to go. I don't want necessarily my ex in jail. That's not what anybody wants. But we want this to stop. We want the injustice to stop, and it has to be repaid. Like, years of our lives have been ruined, and in my life, my children have been affected dramatically. So someone has to understand that and fix it. And so time taken, time back is just, if your kids are taken because of a CPS investigation and it winds up being unfounded, you get that time back, mandatory. There's no discretion. There's no, give them a slip. You just get the time back. So we feel like that's a great way to motivate, I guess, the false allegation, because it wouldn't be beneficial by just getting that extra time.
I want to add that I think everybody has to know what their capacity is. And I think that because one individual's capacity is one thing, it doesn't mean everybody's capacity is that thing. There's some people that are really good with strategic interventions, and some people who are just not. That's just the truth of the matter. Some people are really good with media campaigns and certain outreaches, and other people are not. Because some people are not good at it, they assume it's not possible. And that's why knowing what you're good at is crucial, because if you're not good at it, it doesn't mean that it won't work. It just means that you don't know how to do it. So I don't want to discourage people from trying something because somebody else said it won't work here. I think there's so many different angles to work these things, and we got to believe that there are different angles. We got to know when to, I keep using Kenny Rogers, the gambler. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. I think that's very true. But if I let people tell me what was possible and I kept listening to them, I would not be where I am right now. And so people have to know what they're good at, what they're committed to, how much resources they have, and not just money, but energy. And make some decisions about how they're going to attack this situation. There's no one size fits all way of approaching this stuff, but there are a lot of ways to approach it.
Well, I think that's a great point, right? So you got to know what you're good at, and you might not be good at the first base. I know that I'm just not the people that, I'm not that feeling one. I'm not, people are drawn and throwing gifts at me. That's why I bring Ulysses around. That's what happens there. And that's okay. I'm more of the detail person, behind the scenes of the details, and that's okay, because the point is to get it done. And so we're willing to put the time in. We're willing to do the tedious work. We're not just going to hope it changes. We're going to take the time, make the calls, send the emails, look up the emails. That's boring. No one wants to do it. It's tedious and it's time consuming. Oh, somebody's got to do it. So we're willing to do that piece too.
Yeah, the late Dr. Stephen Miller talked about, we have a white paper that he did on our behalf. He talked about how these cases really need a team. You need specialists from all different areas. And, we understand that everybody doesn't have the money and resources to go and hire all the finest, clinicians, strategists. But there's organizations out there now that we should all be collaborating where, you can do false allegations. We can do some of the regulating, support areas. So if you start finding the resources that are affordable for you, that are knowledgeable out there, start trying to utilize those. And create yourself a team. We have a parent who works with all kinds of things, and he has an amazing team that he's able to work through. So let's move. Oh, the one thing I wanted to say to Jay was you spoke about Jody. Jody has the 3 strikes and you're out. Rael, don't you guys use that in Texas? Didn't Robert Garza use the 3 strikes in Texas?
Yeah, 3 strikes came from actually Claudia Valles' bill. That she did that as a municipality when it's already in Texas, that they can adopt those citations. And then Robert Garza then went to me, he was waiting to hear if it passed the one Senate because they just ended. But he was looking to do that Texas through the whole state. But it is already a law that they can adopt by new municipality in Texas.
Okay. All right. So iPhone.
My name's Anthony. Thank you. First general question is there a statute of limitations to make a defamation claim, for example, or a criminal charge? I guess that's my first question. And then just personally, and I'm sure everybody else has experienced this, the person that's willing to make these claims, they feed off of these things. They feed off of this fight. I mean, I only have so much energy, and when they're in control of the child, they're going to involve the child. So any pushback that I do exacerbates the situation with my child. So it's like you're really in a stuck place. So there's always that fear of pushback, and how historically in my case, every time I've pushed, it's gotten worse between my child. So now, if I were to pursue something, it's like how to navigate that and the fallout that's most likely going to happen with my child because I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah, that's where I live. I live in between a rock and a hard place. Constantly. That's all it is. Always. It's always a catch-22. And I hear this all the time. I personally had to make the decision what is right and what is wrong. Right? So what is healthy and helpful for my child? To be cut off from me and to be with someone that is psychologically and emotionally abusive, I am absolutely certain that is not the best thing. And so I can't make negotiations with a terrorist. I will, and I tried for many, many years, I will never, ever, ever walk on the eggshells appropriately that I don't upset or rock the boat. So I had to give that up. I had to realize that I was living like that. And so I am very careful on the things that I say about my case. I'm very careful about the way that I am with my child, but I cannot be careful if I just make sure he's happy enough, then I won't deal with the consequences of it. And that has brought against more consequences of me. It definitely is a commitment to make a decision. And in terms of the statute, it depends on your state again. You would have to look it up. So there's a 2-year statute of limitations here in Pennsylvania to file a civil lawsuit for a violation of the rights like I did. And so some crimes are different, like Texas just changed some of the crime reporting laws. So it really does depend on the state that you would have to look up those things. And luckily I found it ahead of time because criminal cases with CPS usually last 2 years and the statute of limitation is 2 years, which I have no doubt is not coincidental. So you just have to look that up for your state.
So to back up what Rael is saying, I'm going to jump on Ulysses' statement. It's very personal to everyone because what happens to your children? Cluster Bs will double down. If you have access to your children, they will double down and they will do more harmful things because your children are the messengers to hurt you. So that's part of your capacity measurement. What price is going to get paid inside of my entire family? That's part of capacity. That's exactly what Ulysses was saying. Capacity isn't just how much money do you have. It's everything, energy, your children, your family system. What's going to be the impact? And good question to ask about, maybe look up the statute, because if the statute is based on, let's say 3 years, and I know for my situation with the civil court, there was a 3-year statute. If it's based on 3 years, is that from the date the case closes? Or is it from the date of the occurrence?
It's from the date they start messing with you. So like the very first time CPS came to my house, that's the clock started ticking.
Just, I think as important as the legal side of this is, I challenge people to think creatively about other directions they can come from in order to make the fight more effective. I had to come from military. I had to come from a military standpoint. My ex-wife is a former military, a Navy veteran who has done some things in the military that I'm aware of. She's a professor at a college. I had to go into that area and challenge her role in that area. This isn't just a legal fight. I think if people try to just make this a legal fight, you're going to frustrate yourself. You got to figure out if there's some other options for you to rock their boat, as opposed to just looking at this from a legal standpoint. And I cannot speak to everybody on here because I don't know everybody's situation. I do know that there are other aspects of this fight that need to be considered. And if you will stop looking at the legal for a minute and look at that person's other relationships and figure out how you can impact their relationships beyond that, because most of them don't want to be in court either. And there are things that are more important to them than court. You got to figure out what those things are that are more important to them than court and start to go after those areas as well.
Can I just ask very quickly a follow-up? What tactically do we hope we could achieve by pursuing something like this?
When you say we, I just really struggle with that because I don't know what every individual is after. I'll tell you what I was after. I was after creating such a clear such a clear storyline and narrative that this person comprehensively is a liar, that this person is untrustworthy, that in so many different places that I showed that this person is a problem. And I was able to do that. And it wasn't just in court, but those other things that I've done impact what's going on in court now. You start to see somebody throw up the white flag, and even the people in the court don't know why the flag is going up. But I do. It's because I've done other things. And if I expose those things, and they're true, I'm not just, making stuff up. These things are true. If I expose those things, my end game is to show that this person has deceived a lot of people. And I can show you in 5 different fronts where this person has done that. And I can bring in, people say there are 2 sides to a story. I always tell people there's so many sides to a story, and I'm going to find them all, and I'm going to use them all.
in my case, I'm a behaviorist, that's my career. That's what I do. And so I know that when bad behavior happens and it's rewarded by me backing up and saying, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't want me to have the kids. Okay, you have the kids. It's not a problem. You were so horrific that it worked. That just reinforces that behavior. So the only way to stop this kind of behavior is with a consequence. And if the court is not going to give the consequence like they should, then I have to explore other avenues, because I know in my case it will never stop, and I can't do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, to that point, and to what Anthony's dealing with, I'm going to say I 100% agree is that we can't tolerate bad behavior, but when we go against and try to get consequences for that bad behavior, and quite often the courts don't get it, it's a double bind. Now they'll double down on the other side, and we didn't get to change the behavior. So that's where you have to be very strategic to what Ulysses is saying. Consider that other person your opponent, and you have to look at every dynamic, their personality, their traits, your children, what's their capacity, what are your resources, how old is the child, how much longer do you have to go? All of those things play a role in making that really good, healthy decision for yourself. And not every one of us here has the same decision to make. It's very different.
Absolutely. And a piece of at least my fight too is educating the courts. They need training desperately about this kind of dynamic, and it starts with someone making some noise about it. And I'm working with some professionals here in Pennsylvania to come up with a curriculum to start training it. So, if one avenue doesn't work because of a reason, then at least I look and say, well, look, then I might have to fix that reason first before anything can happen.
Right. Yeah, there's multiple people trying to educate. ISNAF we created a judge's handbook, and we spent, I'm going to say about 3 years ago, we sent it to every judge we could get an address on all over the country. Whether it was effective or not, we don't know, because we have no measurable result for it. Whether they read it or not, we don't know either. But with that, I want to thank you guys for showing up here today and giving us an amazing presentation. We intend to get this edited and posted on our YouTube channel. Many people, and I will refer lots of people to go take a look at it. False allegations show up unexpectedly for lots of people. And I hope that we can collaborate together as we continue to navigate this, community, because there's a lot of work to be done. But that being said, there has been tons of progress, and I see progress from what you guys have done. I've been in the community since 2002, and just what you guys have done in the last few years is progress. So thank you for coming and sharing your information with us. So with that, I'm going to close our call with a little quote. It's an anonymous person, but it says, "Treat failure like a scientist. Each attempt is an experiment. Each mistake is a clue. You're not failing, you're refining." So go out and work your cases and be very strategic, and like a scientist, take a look. There are no failures. So with that, good night. Thank you both. Sincerely appreciate it. And I'll see you all for our next meeting. I believe it's the 22nd.